Hello, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. And the draft is rapidly approaching, and it is draft season and it is mock draft season. You guys have been asking for a mock draft, and I am delivering. And I am joined by my good friend Will Morris, who is a draft creator at the Swish Theory, which, if you follow this channel, you've seen Matt Powers, who I've had on a couple times as well. Anyways, Will, how's it going?
I'm doing great, Ben. Appreciate you having me on here. Really excited to talk draft. I think it's a week from today, so rapidly
Yeah,
approaching.
especially when I release this. It's probably going to be even less than that. I'll probably release this on like Thursday or Friday. We're recording this on Wednesday evening. But Will and I are going to go through this mock draft together. I am going to take the odd picks, and Will is going to take the even picks. So this is just the rookie scale, huge consensus board pasted here just for our and your reference. And I guess let's just get started and not keep dilly-dallying. Just before we begin, just so all of you know, this mock draft is going to be based on what we would personally do at each of these picks. We're not going to be trying to predict the picks. That's just a totally different exercise. So maybe there'll be some aspects of realism, but mostly it's just going to be based on our evaluations, which I know some will align somewhat with consensus and some won't. Cool. Let's get started. And I have the first pick with Atlanta. And even though it's seeming like this is becoming more and more unlikely, I'm just going to take Sarr, who for me is the best or second best prospect with Ron Holland. And I think defense obviously is fantastic with him. And that's the reason you're drafting Sarr, one, because of his defense. But what I find really interesting is his offensive fit in Atlanta. And I went back and looked at some of the things they did with John Collins back when he was on the team. And I think Sarr could probably approximate some of this, playing with a really spaced out floor, driving against the mismatch. And Sarr's best offensive traits are probably just going to be his driving and his fluidity, as he's not a great scorer at the basket and the shooting isn't great. But Collins had was a very different prospect, but was very raw coming out. And because I think of Trey and the offensive infrastructure, he developed a lot as a perimeter and like a utility offensive big. And that's kind of how I imagine Sarr, who has showed some real flashes of ball handling stuff. And Will, you feel free to stop me at any time. But yeah, Sarr's fluidity is just phenomenal, and his ability to handle the ball, to create separation off the dribble is pretty uncanny for a center. There are definite concerns that I have, like with his finishing and traffic and some of the strength stuff, but I'm willing to take my chances here at number one. So what do you think about that pick overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think Sarr really does have as strong a case as anyone for number one in this class. Just speaking on his defense a little bit, which is obviously kind of the pitch with him. He's a great defender. And I think he'll be a very good defender in the NBA from day one. His switchability is what really stands out to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's low key better on switches than he is on in terms of
think he's probably at his most comfortable on the perimeter, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's not like he has insane technique in drop yet, or he's that level of I guess the classic big man stuff that necessarily isn't necessarily his game quite yet, but his movement skills on the perimeter are completely ridiculous. I think just generally similar to you, I guess, in some ways, because you have Holland up there with him. I don't think Sarr is consensus obvious number one for every situation.
Agreed.
Just I think a lot of the offensive stuff, it's a little bit more flashes than it is a Chet Holmgren, where you knew
for sure
he shot 40% from three at Gonzaga on good volume and versatility.
And finished absolutely everything.
Finished everything. And with Sarr, I don't think he's a great role man yet, but I think playing in Atlanta with a very spaced out floor and a great lob threat or lob thrower in Trey Young, that's going to make it a lot easier for him. So I think if you're Sarr, this is a fantastic fit for you, especially in LA.
It seemed
compared
interesting
to
because it seems like this is like the Atlanta and SARS camps have not gotten along, at least based on the public leaks and smoke screens. Because I do agree with you that I think playing with Trey would be really useful for his weaknesses. But anyways, let's get on to your first pick. You have the Wizards at 2. Who are you going to take here?
Yeah, so for the Wizards here, I'm actually going to go with the other guy that you mentioned, Ron Holland.
Yeah,
To me, number one prospect in this class. I'd probably take him number one for most situations. Um, there's another guy I have up there too in Reed Shepard, who I did consider for this pick, but I think Ron is just such an overwhelming athlete. And that athleticism plus motor combination is a really hard thing to pass up at this spot. Love his playmaking on defense. I don't think he's technically a perfect defender at this stage, but like who is? There's definitely like times where you catch him like falling asleep off ball or not like using his length fully like when he's defending on the ball or something like that. But for the most part, he's a guy that is really trying his best and trying to disrupt plays and make things happen on that end. Then offensively, the shot is obviously like the big question with him. I think that's something that's been discussed a lot, but focusing on what he can do incredibly well right now, and that's his driving ability. Not like a super efficient finisher yet, but his acceleration, raw speed, power. I love his like contortion ability around the rim. Like even though he's not super efficient yet, like his ability to finish at weird angles and through contact and
yeah,
generate free throw attempts. I think that is all really special. And I
yeah. And
think
I think his passing is pretty underrated, honestly. This is just a
yeah,
nice little clip of him hezzying the guy out of his shoes and missing a layup. But his decision making kind of gets maligned, I think, too much, considering he's a mega usage 18-year-old playing for Ignite, and he flashed some really good pick and roll stuff to the interior, skip passes. I'm pretty optimistic about his playmaking as well, which is part of why I like this Wizards fit as well, because I think they really need more like legit primary playmaker, decision maker types, and I think Holland, while it's certainly not that yet, could potentially develop into that.
yeah, absolutely. And I think pairing him with Bilal is very interesting. Because Bilal isn't an amazing shooter yet. I think he was at like 34% this year, but he's definitely a guy who's grown a good bit, and I buy the shot with him. But just having two like really high motor, long, athletic guys on the wing, like that's going to be pretty dangerous when those guys get older.
Yeah.
Um,
I love
yeah,
that idea because I think the ways to go for me at least, so you take Ron or you take one of the guards, whether it's Reed or I like Topic and Collier and Rob up there, because the Wizards still need their like guard size initiator, but that guy might not be there in the draft. And I think if you think Ron is as good as Will and I do, then it makes complete sense. Cool. Let's go on to Houston, and definitely a bit of a difficult decision for me here. I'm not going to take your guy. I'm gonna let you presumably take him at 4, and I'm going to go with Rob Dillingham. And this is a fit that I've really liked for Houston for quite some time. I think they have an excellent infrastructure to insulate Rob defensively, which supposedly is part of his fall, right? He is quite small, and that shows up on the defensive end. But he played on a horrible defensive team at Kentucky, and playing next to Amen Thompson and Jabari Smith and Cam Whitmore and Tari Eason, I think it's going to be great. And he is such a gifted off-ball scorer, along with his obvious handle and pull-up stuff. Like he's going to be great playing off of Jalen Green and Amen in transition and moving off of Şengün. And I think obviously he has the upside to develop into a legit creator with his handle and his pull-up jumper. And this is kind of an interesting spot for Houston. There's a lot of ways they could go. They have a really good roster, obviously. Like they got lucky odds-wise moving up here. And I think Dillingham, to me, is my favorite balance of taking a player who fits with this current roster construction while also not sacrificing talent and upside at the top of the draft to pigeonhole a fit. So, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think it's a great fit, and I'm also like fully on the train that Dillingham is one of the best prospects in this class. Um, I think, yeah, just like a lot of really underrated aspects about his game, like particularly off the ball. I think he's a fantastic off ball shooter. I think he's a guy that is going to be like running around curls and stuff like that. And, you know, when that like advantage is like already created for him, his defender's slightly off balance, it's even more easy for him to like get into his bag and get to those little pull-ups. And yeah, he'll definitely have opportunities to get into that stuff in Houston, playing off all of the guys that they have there. And I really like his ability to put pressure on the rim as well. I think
Yeah.
that's a very underrated aspect of his game, even if he isn't a great finisher yet. Like he has the athleticism to get by his man, to get downhill. I was just doing some research on like Kentucky guard prospects, because you know there's obviously a long history of
Because
those
they're
guys
all
succeeding. Yeah,
one.
I'm hoping to get
It's
some writing
it's like
out on that
Ashton
at some
Hogan,
point.
and, like
But
who was the other guy that was like kind of made a couple years ago? Ty Washington. But otherwise, they're all
yeah,
good.
and like layups made per 40. Like Dillingham, not quite in De'Aaron Fox territory, but he actually made more layups per 40 minutes than Shea did at Kentucky.
Wow.
Which is like pretty crazy. And it's definitely bolstered
That's crazy.
a little bit by transition. Honestly, probably a lot. I need to look at Shea's transition and compare the two, but Dillingham definitely does a lot of his damage in transition. But
That's huge.
I think it's underrated, like how high usage this guy was for Kentucky. Like I think the reason his numbers aren't astronomical is just because he didn't play that much. He's
Right.
really only playing
He
half.
and Reed both came off the bench. Like
yeah, and even Reed, like who I would generally prefer as a prospect, like played like a decent bit more minutes than Dillingham did. And yeah, part of that is Dillingham committing a lot of fouls and things like that on the defensive end that need to get cleaned up. But this guy was a huge time usage dude for Kentucky. And you know, we know how Kentucky guards work at, so I like the pick here.
Cool. So you have the first of two Spurs picks at 4. You'll actually have both picks because that's how even and odd numbers work. But who are you going with it for? I have a feeling I know who you're going to pick, but
yeah, this is Reed Shepherd for me.
figure,
You know,
that's disappointing because I wanted him at 5. But
yeah, I think you know, Shepherd had a pretty special season for Kentucky, unprecedented in a lot of ways. I wrote about him very early in the cycle, and he was at like 50 something percent from 3. And you know, I don't have the article in front of me, but I think I was like, obviously, like this won't maintain, but like 50%, like this guy's obviously a good shooter. And then like, you know, we got 30 some games into the season, it was like this guy's not slowing down. 50% from 3 is absolutely bananas. So you got to give him credit there.
52.1%, 8.2. That's absurd.
Yeah,
this is just crazy. Like this.
Yeah,
this right
the whole thing is just nuts with him. I really like what he brings to the table offensively. I think he's a smart under control player. I don't think the handle it lends itself to like crazy high usage creation, but you know, playing off other creators, he's going to be fantastic. Not like a incredible slasher, but I do like the pace he plays with. I think he can get downhill by himself.
And I think I'll interject and say there is more of this on his high school tape, which I went back and watched somewhat recently, and I think it was good to see him doing more of this stuff. And it's kind of what I would have expected, just given like you're like the main guy at your public high school. It's going to happen. But the fact that Shepherd was able to do it when he was asked to use his handle and stuff more, I kept thinking this 15 kid was Reed when I watched them. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
That's not the case. And I think towards the end of the season, Reed did do some more like legit creative stuff with the ball that made me a little bit more in. I was previously a little skeptical of Reed, but I'm not as high as you are, but definitely higher than I was. Like this pass I remember always against Vanderbilt where he like perfectly hits this lefty live dribble skip pass in the pocket. And it's like, where has this been all season? Where sometimes I worry from like a high end projection standpoint how risk averse he can be, but that's also a good thing for projecting, median outcomes. And I think especially on a Spurs team like with Wemby, he's just like Rob for Houston. I think Reed is going to be a phenomenal off ball partner next to Wemby and Vassell and whoever else you end up taking at 8.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the defensive fit is like solid too, just because like, having Wemby there kind of helps everything. The guy can clean up whatever gets by. Like his obvious flaw is defending on the ball, keeping guys in front of him. Like that's a big question mark. Does he have the athleticism to, stick with guys on the perimeter and not get blown by? That's not as much of an issue in San Antonio, although it is still an issue anywhere. And I think all the other stuff that he does on defense is enough to provide plus value. Like 4.6% steal rate, 2.whatever% block rate. Like that's
crazy. Yeah. Nuts.
Incredible events creation. Like I feel like there's guard prospects that we talk about there. It's like, all right, they got like a 2.3% steal rate. Like they're making events happen. Like maybe they're negative defenders, but like if they can like make enough events happen, it's like Reed Sheppard is making like a ridiculous amount happen on that end. 4.6% is an incredible.
It's pretty nuts. It is pretty crazy, and I think this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm at 5 with Detroit. I kind of hate this spot for them because I feel like I have to take a prospect I don't want to take, and that's going to be Risa, where I don't love Risa. I've made multiple videos about him on my channel, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about him. Overall, I'm much lower on his creation game, kind of, and I just think the ceiling's kind of low. But the Pistons have pigeonholed themselves into a position where they really just need spacers and guys who can play with Cade, especially. And I think Risa is so used to that off-ball role. He's an incredibly good off-ball shooter, great cutter, great in transition, great screen navigator, point of attack defender with his awesome agility and bend and lateral quickness. I don't know what his ceiling looks like on either defense and offense, but I think Detroit is kind of positioned, and that's why I really wanted Sheppard, because I think Sheppard fits this but even better for Detroit. But obviously, I figured that wasn't going to happen in this mock draft. But I think Risa, while not being like the most exciting guy in the world, makes sense for Detroit here. So I'm curious what you think about this pick and what direction you think Detroit will and maybe could or should go.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Risa is not going to be there for them in real life.
Yeah, so he will not. No.
Yeah, which I think I'm in a similar boat to you, where I'm not super high on him, but like I don't like 5 is a little high for me there, but
agreed.
At the same time,
it's like I can stomach it.
It's exactly, like he is clearly like a very, very good shooter. There's a guy, like, I think it's underrated that he played like 65 games. Like he's played twice as many games as like a lot.
Yeah, he's got a lot of basketball under his belt.
And like 38.7% from 3, I think, was his percentage through all those games across all competitions, like 250 some attempts. The guy clearly is a capable shooter. And like, even if he isn't, some all-world creator, like I think his bag as like a basic closeout attacker is like okay, like straight line drives, like that stuff like does matter, like getting to like his sidestep, things like that. Those are all ways for him to impact the game. Defensively, even though his wingspan isn't great, he's still big and fairly mobile.
Yeah, exactly.
And creates enough events, but yeah, I do want to ask you, because I know like his combine measurements were like pretty horrendous. Do you take any of that stuff into account? just because like
Not really, just because I think it's stuff that I already kind of knew. Like, I always
yeah,
thought he looked kind of small on tape. I think I've mentioned that on the videos I've made, that he, like, just kind of feels like he gets overwhelmed kind of easily when it comes to size and length. And I think that was, that came true when it went to the combine measurements. But I think that definitely is an issue where obviously most 18-year-old, 19-year-olds need to add strength, but I think Reese's share is like quite far behind frame wise. And I think is probably going to take a good amount of time to get to a point where he's comfortable with that.
yeah, no, that's I would tend to agree with you there. I mean, it's definitely startling when you see like 31 inch vert and like
Yeah,
pretty much even wingspan with height. But at the same time, like I think all that kind of does show up on tape a little bit.
absolutely. So let's move on to your third pick. You have the Hornets 6. I think this is a really interesting spot. Who are you going to go with here, Will?
Yeah, I'm going between a couple guys here, but I think that this is a solid spot for Donovan Clingan. To me, just like outrageous rim protector. His ground coverage, recovering to get back and swat shots is incredible. Great physical tools. He's one of those shot blockers that like just kind of like alters everything, even if he isn't like getting a block. And his block rates both seasons have been super high, so he is blocking a lot of shots. But like even if he isn't like recording the block, he's altering the
Right.
shot and making it
And I think his
difficult.
mobility improvements in year 2 are pretty real. Like, he's much more
Yeah,
comfortable this year playing out at the level and guarding in space. He's still not incredible here, like compared to like a Sar or even like a Misi or something, but it got a lot better from year 1 to 2, and I do find that pretty encouraging.
yeah,
That he was able to make those strides.
yeah. The fit here is certainly interesting, just because Charlotte does have Mark Williams, who's been like pretty solid for them, but like I don't think Mark Williams is like uh, a good enough talent that you take
Yeah,
the
and he's
chance on.
also had a bunch of weird, like, nebulous injury stuff too that makes me
Yeah,
wonder about the future with him.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, like Klingon too has had his own issues staying on the floor. Um, and it's probably like a lot of the reason I don't see him in like that like total upper crust of this class. There's some real injury concerns and things like that there, and he's minutes a lot of like only playing like half the game, things like that. But like I think having Mark there, like at least early in Klingon's career, that can like you can help ease him into like adjusting to playing a full NBA season.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like the pick. I think it makes sense. 7 for Portland. I have a couple options here. I think I'm going to go with the one that I have pitched before, and it's very non-consensus. I would have taken Klingon for them if he was there, but I'm going to take Yves Misi, who I love.
Wow.
Um, I am a huge Misi guy. I've talked about him on this channel. I made a video on him, and I think he is very much a ceiling bet. And I think Portland is in the place where they can afford to make that. I am super high on his defensive upside. I think his ground coverage and mobility are absurd, combined with him being 6'11" without shoes, measured to the combine, crazy vertical leaper, really strong, and the offense is certainly a bit raw. I think my biggest overall concern with him, he's not a shooter, but like I don't really need my 7-foot rim running center shooting. That's kind of just like icing, really. If you're not drafting these special guys like Sar or even like Chet or no, I guess Mobley's not even really a shooter like that, or Wemby or whoever. But Misi's ability to put the ball on the floor and the flashes of handling creation, I really value bigs who can dribble and do things on offense. And I think Misi is possibly suited to do that at the next level. The feel overall, I'd say, is my biggest issue. I don't think it's maybe as terrible as like the bad assists to turnover numbers would say, because I think like a lot of bad bigs, yeah, not great. He just like really struggles, as we can see, right? Like not a lot of turnovers, no assists, because he just really doesn't have that kind of passing feel. And I do think that's worrisome, but his finishing is great, the lob threat stuff, and the defensive upside I really believe in. And I think Portland really needs that like defensive anchor type big. And maybe I could have gotten him at 14. But that's, I'm imagining this is a world where who knows, and maybe they wouldn't. But yeah, kind of a outside of the box, out of left field type pick, but I'm happy with it.
I like that a lot. I mean, I probably am slightly lower on him just because I do think the feel is definitely raw, but he's also new-ish to the game of basketball.
Yeah.
So like he's a freshman and then also is like even younger than that in basketball years. He like really that Duke game earlier in the season. Like I think that was
Yeah,
kind
that's
of the
the
one where
game.
he like
That
popped
is
off.
the game.
Like it's an often referenced game with him, but I think for valid reason. Like that was the first time I had watched Baylor all season and like immediately just like popped off the screen for his motor and athleticism. Yeah, no, I think definitely a spicy pick, but I'm a fan of Eve.
Yeah, we're again maybe a tiny reach, but by my board, but I think it's like an upside swing that Portland needs to take. There's a lot of safer prospects that I think will be available at 14, but I don't think there will necessarily be talents like this available there, at least in our mock draft. And in real life, there probably will be, and I think Misi will be there in real life, but he wouldn't be in this mock draft. So, anyways, you have your second Spurs pick at 8. Who are you gonna pair with Reed Shepard?
Yeah, so this is clearly Devin Carter for me.
Love that.
He's
Yeah.
a guy I'm very high on in this class. Think he's in that same tier as like your Klingons. I considered him at 6 for Charlotte as well. Kind of in like the Dillingham-ish kind of group for me, in that like 4 to 6 range.
Mm.
I'm just a really big fan of Devin Carter, even though he's an older prospect and that people will count that against him. I do think it counts for something that he's a guy that genuinely improved every single season of his college career. And,
Mhm.
the shooting is like kind of like, as it is for many prospects, like that's been a question. But like he did get up like a crazy number of
Yeah, he
attempts.
looked like a shooter this year, as we can see, like
Yeah.
deep movement threes. I feel like anecdotally, I'm sure I know our buddy Zach Miller does like NBA range data. I feel like there isn't a prospect in this class whose average depth of jumper is deeper. Maybe there
Yeah.
is, but like
No, I mean,
Carter is
it's,
just bombs from
yeah,
deep.
yeah, like the versatility and the confidence that he shoots with gives me a lot of optimism in his long-term projection as a
I do
shooter.
think, yeah, looking at his improvement is interesting, right? Because big volume spikes pretty much every year. Finally saw the percentage spike. Even though he's not an amazing free throw shooter, still saw improvements. I do have some worries about his like lack of mid-range creation and that kind of
Yeah,
scoring stuff. But I think Carter's shooting leap is I don't know if I think he's going to be 38% on high volume, but I do think he is a much better shooter this year, and I do think that leap is notable.
yeah. I in my piece on him, I kind of wrote about like the degree of difficulty, and I mapped all of his attempts and just kind of organized them by like movement and just like standard catch and shoot. And a lot of his attempts were off movement. I think on catch and shoots, he was like just like stationary catch and shoots. He was around 40%, which does count for something. Because I think in the NBA, like, not to say you're not going to run him around screens,
Yeah,
because like if he is
34%
shooting
off the
around screens,
dribble, 42% on stationary attempts, as you wrote. Again, make sure to go read Will's stuff. It's awesome. Switch theory is great. But yeah, and what do you think about the fit with Carter and Reed together?
yeah, I think Carter is similar to Reed in that he creates a lot of events defensively, but I think he's just like way more sturdy on the ball. He's a pest, a guy that can guard up as well, guard bigger defenders or bigger offensive players rather. Really strong, really stocky, and that's like a 6'9" wingspan too. Like there was many instances this season of him like switching on to bigger players and more than holding his own.
Yeah, like
So
this
I
last
think,
clip we have here of him that I included from you, where he just like stonewalls a 6'10" dude
yeah,
and blocks his shit. Like that's crazy.
that's ridiculous. Of course, he's getting pushed back a little bit, but like he maintains verticality, and you
Yeah,
know,
I mean, he eats that blow to the chest without losing his balance, and is still able to jump off of a back pedal and block that
yeah,
shot. Like he is a pretty nuts athlete, which I think I
yeah,
probably may have underrated a little bit. I definitely have been lower on Carter than you and other people, but I think for San Antonio especially, it makes so much sense with like his defensive versatility and again some of like the off ball game next to, I guess in this case, Reed and Wemby
yeah,
and Vassell.
yeah, absolutely. And I do think like Wemby makes it easy. Like this is like having a guy that can like play off ball like that, and like I think Carter's going to be good attacking the rim off closeouts and things like that. Um, yeah, I love the fit in San Antonio there.
All right, cool. Memphis at 9. I have no idea what to do, to be perfectly honest. But I think I'm going to do something a little weird, and I'm going to give them Toppich, um, which is pretty much solely we have a stacked roster. Whoever we draft at this point, like Clayton's gone, maybe he would play. I feel like most of the options would either be big reaches for me or wouldn't really play much next year. And Topic obviously is sliding because of his ACL stuff. I think of him as a top 3 to 5 guy in this class, regardless. And I think Memphis is one of the best landing spots for him in the lottery, at least, to sit and heal as much as he needs to, but also have a really great system to learn how to play off ball and learn how to play next to great players and hopefully use that great infrastructure to realize his upside. I think the ceiling for him is enormous with the level of driver and layup maker that he is. Like a truly special layup creator in the half court who can really pass. I think his jumper is better than it gets credit for. Defense is, very optional, but when you're playing next to Jaren Jackson, that's obviously going to look a little bit better. And again, it's weird with this current roster, but I do think it's kind of underrated. Like outside of John Bain, how little like scoring juice, especially in the backcourt, the Grizzlies have. And I think Topic is a good long-term remedy for that. This pick is a bet on upside and a long-term kind of selection that's saying I don't love anyone on the board in terms of their ability to be a needle mover this year to move Memphis like that bit closer to a title. So I'm going to take a guy who I think can do that in the future. Kind of a weird one, but curious what your thoughts on or that, because I definitely don't think it makes a lot. I think it makes sense in my head, but it's not what people expect.
Yeah, I think Topic at 9, like if you're really high on him, because I know there are people that are very high on him, like it's just like a steal, like it's a value play. He really produced this season before his injuries, and like his ability to blow by guys is like it's fantastic. Even though he isn't like some crazy above the rim athlete like Ja, his style of slashing.
Zero dunks this year which is absurd considering that he was an incredible finisher without dunking the ball once. Like it's nuts.
Yeah, and he's like getting by guys with like very simple moves. Like it's just like crossover, hezzy, like screen comes, like just immediately like eats up the space. Like the second of confusion on defense at the level of the screen, and he's just gonna like straight line go to the rim. I think his ability to like capitalize on those opportunities is very impressive. Yeah, I think the fit in Memphis is just like it is definitely a little weird to me, just because I don't know how he fits all yet. Like
This is kind of a throwing fit out the window kind of pick right now.
Yeah. I think it's a good. I think like value wise, like it could end up looking very good, but it's just tough because I just don't know the level of off ball shooter he is yet.
And that's the big question, and hopefully he can develop that while sitting. But yeah, that
right.
would be my big issue with this as well. But again, I would have big issues with literally anybody I put here. So yeah, that's my kind of out of the box pick right there. You have, I guess, back to back kind of wild picks for me, but that's all right. Utah at 10. Will, who are we thinking?
No, this is a tough one for me too.
This
Like
is an interesting spot.
similar to you on the last one. I don't like. There's nothing that like from a fit perspective, like there's a best player available thing that does stand out to me, but there is not really a fit thing that stands out to me.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna take the highest guy on my board. Um, and he, like, I feel like decently about him as the highest guy left on my board here, and that's Zach Edey. Um,
Wow. Okay.
which that's another like probably spicy pick, one of the most polarizing players in this class for sure.
Yeah. Give us your optimistic case for Edie here.
Yeah, I think just like at this point in the draft, what Zach Edey does well is just like he does overwhelmingly well. Dominant inside the arc scorer. Um, yeah, 113 dunks, finished
Ridiculous.
everything at the rim. And I really like his ability to like play in the post, play with his back to the basket, get to those little hook shots, get to those up and unders. Like this is certainly a guy that isn't just big. Like he is obviously very big, but he's a highly skilled player, has great touch. I tweeted some clips of him the other day too, but his length just gives him such an advantage as a scorer. He's got like a 7'10.5" wingspan or something like that. Even like against Donovan Clingan, he put up 35 points in the national championship game. With his reach is so high that he can even get over, the guy I took at 6. He can even get over that wingspan. So I just think like offensively, he's such an incredible talent. It's tough to know how it's going to work in the NBA, but like sometimes you need to just like look at what a player does well, and he does what he does well so obviously and outrageously well that I think the upside is just too hard to pass up here. And I think like a low end scenario, or not necessarily like the lowest of low ends, but kind of like a mid case scenario with him. I think like with Naz Reid as like being like the 6th man of the year, like I think you're going to see more of these like 3rd, 6th man big types. Like for a while, there's been these like spark plug Jamal Crawford, right, Williams types. Like I think it's going to swing another direction.
It's funny that you say that, because that is like exactly how I view Edey, as someone who's on the lower end. But I hear everything that you and plenty of other people who are high on him get. That's kind of how I see him, as like he's going to do what he does really well. He's going to give you buckets in the paint, and that's about it. And I think as like that super 6th man type role, I really think that could be impactful. My kind of worries are more about, one, I don't know what you think about the defense, but I am concerned personally, given some of the movement and the outside of the paint stuff. And then I think the playmaking, while definitely fine, is like a little underwhelming to me at times. But I definitely understand the vision, or I understand why people are much higher than Edey. And again, I think he's just one of the fun, because he's one of the most divisive, maybe the most divisive prospects I can remember while covering the draft. Like I don't think there's a prospect with as wide a range among like smart people whose opinions I value. I'm like, people have him 1, people have him in the 40s, and I'm like, I can see both. I can understand it all.
I think it's just bizarre, right? Because there really hasn't been a guy who's been this good that's like stuck around in college, So there hasn't really been a guy like this that we've seen ever. There's been guys that are like 7'4" that have entered the league. We had one last year, but there isn't one exactly like Edey in the way that he plays.
He's an extremely unique player, and I think regardless, if you're higher, you're lower, I think everyone's gonna be fascinated to see how they turn out. But I think as for the Utah fit, I don't hate it at all, just because I think the Jazz are in such a talent acquisition mode that like they'll probably just end up taking the best guy available, because they just need more talent. And I think if you think Edey can be a high-end talent, you should take him. And I certainly would have taken a different player, but the philosophy behind it for me would have been the same. So Cool. Let's move on to 11, and this to me between two, but I'm gonna give them Isaiah Collier, who I have in the top 3 of my board, but three in a very fluid draft, right? Very wide, very even for me, like where I have big tiers all over the place, and there really isn't a spot for like I didn't like I thought about Memphis, right? But that Collier wouldn't make sense because of some of his lack of injury stuff. Portland wouldn't make sense. Detroit would make sense. But I think Chicago does as a team that so desperately needs a tear down and a reset that I'm skeptical they're actually going to do that because they're owned by the people that they're owned by. But if there's any team that needs to be like trade literally everyone except for maybe Kobe White, who I think would actually be a really nice long-term backcourt partner for Collier as like a dynamic shooter, great off-ball player, where Collier definitely has his flaws, as many people have noted, the turnover stuff, the lack of a consistent jumper. But what he does well, almost like Edie, is so overwhelmingly good. His driving with burst and strength, his playmaking creativity and vision and high-end stuff are phenomenal. And I believe enough in the shot and his defensive tools to where I think for a team like Chicago, who's like been stuck in purgatory for a decade now or whatever, maybe even longer, needs this inflection of high-end talent. And I think they're in a position where they can take a guy like Collier and not feel so bad if they don't hit, because if you take a guy like, I don't know, Connect or De Silva or something like that and they work, that's not moving the needle for a Chicago team that isn't contending and isn't bad enough to get top picks. So I think while I debated a bit on the player to give them here, I think they should absolutely go for like the upside swing here as a team that just needs that juice and real explosion and excitement.
Yeah, I like the pick. I have Collier around this 10-ish range on my board, and he's someone I've warmed up to a bit too. I think if you talked to me a couple months ago, I probably would have had him in that probably like just outside lottery-ish range. But yeah, I mean, like pretty obviously the best like standstill advantage creator left in the draft at this point, and one of the best in the class period. Similar to Topic, just like able to get by dudes. Except
I have a
Collier's,
type.
yeah,
I have
yeah.
a type. I clearly have a type, but yes.
Collier's definitely like earlier though. Also similar to Topic, just like doesn't really dunk in the half court, like not really a great vertical athlete, which is a concern for me. But I do like his close range jumper. I think he can get to his spots. Yeah, just like definitely like I don't think I'm as optimistic as like top 3 or 4 in this class just because of some of those. Like I do think there is some decision making stuff that needs to get cleaned up with him. I thought it got better as the year went on, but there's times where he'll like lose.
Definitely the weaker start I feel like anchored a lot of his perception because he definitely was struggling before like the midseason where he really turned it on and had some fantastic games. But yeah, again, just like a bet on advantage creation, a bet on ceiling.
Yeah, I think it's a great pick at this spot.
Awesome. So very, very intrigued to see who you go with here. The Oklahoma City Thunder at 12. A ton of different directions they could go. What's your pick going to be here, Will?
Man, yeah, this is another interesting spot because team is obviously very good already. They were the 1 seed. They're contending for a championship next season.
Yep.
Man. There's part of me that like I am a Connect fan. There's part of me that wants to go Connect here, but I feel like Modest Buzelis is the best player left on the board.
You sniped the hell out of me there. I
can't really let him slide past 12. Buzelis is a guy that I think defensively is going to be an impact player from day one. Not like super strong yet, but like very physical on that.
Rim protection is phenomenal.
Yeah, very, very good rim protector. I think he can be a great help side guy with Chet there. Um, Offensively, very skilled player. I like his handle. I like his creativity, even though like I
Yep.
don't really think he has the lower body strength yet to like really, get by guys consistently and like
Yeah.
create that
I
much
think a
space
play
for
like
himself. I
this is
think
a
this,
great
yeah,
example of
this is
that,
a good
where he
play.
can, like, open guys up with his handle and his, like,
Yeah,
creativity, but then just get walled off. But I think that's like
yeah,
a okay, you develop his core, you develop his lower body, and those he's turning those into free throws and layups.
yeah, exactly. And that's, there's definitely, I don't really see the pathway to him being like some super high volume initiator. Like I think he's been compared to Franz by many. Like
Terrible,
yeah, and like
horrible.
Franz is like was like pretty big. Like he was pretty
And he was
well
also afraid to
coming
shoot
into the league.
before the NBA. Where like
Yeah,
Modest is like aggressive and confident as hell, which I love about
yeah,
Modest.
yeah, absolutely. Like he definitely does play with a chip on his shoulder. Um, but yeah, I think the shot. Like I buy it. Like it the numbers were not there,
Me
but I
too.
think he
Yeah.
has solid touch. Um,
I think his
yeah, I don't know.
mid-range efficiency is a good sign. He's a great free throw shooter. Like he just
Yeah,
does a lot of the indicators well that I think would suggest he's a better shooter than his percentages. And I think you'd agree with that. And
yeah,
OKC has Chip Englund, so
yeah, exactly. I think it's kind of a no brainer here, even though like OKC, like he's
yeah.
probably not gonna like he's a young guy. I do want to ask you this: like in a vacuum, would you prefer Modest to Ricochet?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I'm in the same spot right now. I
Yeah,
think
I think Modest. So for me, I have like a group of five, like that's like Sar, Holland, and then like the initiator guard swings. And after that, I think Modest is the best guy. I just think his ceiling is most interesting. He has the most pathways to being good, whether that's as a shooter or with his playmaking or with his rim protection or with his awesome driving potential. And I think at 12, it's just like really good value too. And I think
yeah,
OKC is a good spot for his long-term development.
yeah, no, absolutely. I we'll see what happens with OKC. Like if they trade the pick, if they match the Williams brothers up here. So I don't know. We'll
Yeah,
we'll
I would
see the
imagine
next
they
year.
probably take Cody if he's here, but we don't have to do
Yeah,
it because
yeah,
it's. But I do think Modest again is is a great player, even if I don't know if it would happen in real life. Sacramento at 13, really interesting. This is a pretty easy one for me. I'm going to give them Deron Holmes. This is a fit that's been kind of theorized, at least that I've seen on like King's Twitter forever. Um, I know they're going to be happy with this one, and I think it makes a lot of sense. A bit of a reach for me, but I don't. There's no one like overwhelmingly good that I would like want to go BPA. And I think Holmes as a front court partner next to Sabonis makes so much sense. The Kings so badly need another front court defender aside from Keegan Murray. That's been their biggest issue. Like the Harrison Barnes spot has just been atrocious on that end over the last couple of years as he's declined. And I think Holmes gives you the versatility to play the 4 and the 5 at spots. I don't know if there's like star upside with him. Again, he's a little older. He's not the greatest athlete in the world. His feel isn't phenomenal. So those are all like main star upside indicators that aren't there. But his handle and ability to put the ball on the floor as a true like 6'10 guy is special. His coordination and the fact that he can do this while doing the big man stuff, being a great rebounder and post player and finisher and pick and roll defender and drop, that I think he has that ability to play, just play the 5 next to, or when Sabonis is out, play the 4 in lineups as well. I think he gives you such versatility while also just profiling like an NBA player with very unique, versatile skill sets. A pretty reliable jumper, the handle, some flashes of playmaking, scoring on the interior. There's so much that he does well, and I think he's such a ideal modern Swiss Army knife big. And especially, I think I trust Mike Brown to get the most out of him offensively. So, curious what you think about Duran and the fit in Sacramento.
Yeah, I think Deron is a good player, and I think I value him in kind of this mid first roundish range, maybe a little lower than 13, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't
I
have
think
him this
that's
high on my board, but I just think
yeah,
this fit is so perfect that like
yeah.
I
I
wanted
think
to get
it's
it.
like with Deron, like he's been in college 3 years, and a lot of the like telltale signs, just like statistical indicators of being an NBA big, like high free throw rate, dunking, like good block rate. he's had
Right.
all of that the last 3 seasons. 72.4 free throw rate, always had solid block rates, and then all the skill stuff has just gotten better every single season to the point
Truly has
where
blossomed.
he's
Yeah,
like handling pick and rolls and stuff this year. Um, I think definitely some questions with the Kings. I think the offensive fit is really good, and I do generally like Deron Holmes's instincts as a help side rim protector, but I just like size wise, he is like
he is a little short. Yeah.
6'9", probably like 6'10" in shoes. I think he measured a bit under 6'9" at the combine, 7'1" wingspan, 236. So it's not um like he's kind of like Jalen Williams ish sized. So I don't know that like definitely does hurt a little bit, especially when
For
it's like
sure.
Sabonis is your other like primary rim protector,
Yeah.
but like the
My other
offense.
thought for this pick was going to was going to be to give them Ware, but I had too many worries about the offensive fit in that
Yeah, yeah.
scenario.
I think
But
Deron is a much better offensive fit there.
yeah, but this is one that I just like I want to see happen, and I think would be really cool. And once again, like no option here. I'm so in love with where I have to make it happen. One more lottery pick, and then we're gonna definitely pick up the pace through the second round because we're already almost at an hour. But that's fine because this has been
Oh
great.
wow, yeah.
Portland, who are you taking to pair with my Nisi pick? This is funny because we have different ones here, and it's gonna be the
Yeah.
same in New York.
Yeah, no, definitely a few options here that I'm looking at on my board. I think I'm probably going to go with Castle here, Stephon Castle from UConn.
Yeah.
Going to go a
Castle
lot.
has definitely fallen a bit compared to consensus.
Yeah.
I'll say I think we probably align on Castle. Why is this a spot for him that you like versus like the top 5?
Yeah, I guess like I think with Castle, I don't know about all the point guard stuff, but
Yeah.
I personally think that he's more of like a complementary wing type player.
Yep. He's a
And
wing to me.
he's really good at all that stuff. Like he's a good screen setter as a guard. Like he's a good finisher, really good connective passer, good cutter, crashes the offensive glass. He's really good at all those little things. Love his point of attack defense. Think he's a guy that navigates screens really well and can come in from behind and recover and block shots. I think like with him, I do really worry about the shooting. Like there was teams that were defending you like him with a big when they played against you. Which
In the
like
tournament, that's kind of how it went.
yeah, that's a problem. If you're like a 6'5" guard, and you're not as overwhelming an athlete as Ron Holland,
Yeah.
So I really like him as a complimentary wing. I hope that the shot comes around for him, but just to give some numbers to it here, I think I was looking at this earlier, but 11 for 41 on dribble jumpers, 15 for 58 on catch and shoot.
Even just looking at the raw numbers, like volume is okay, but I think is skewed by a couple late season games where he took a bunch of wide open ones that they gave him, but like not super comfortable, and also not a prolific like mid range or free throw scorer as well.
Yeah, I mean 75% isn't bad. Like I don't think his shot is like a lost cause by any means, but
sure, it's not broken by any means.
Yeah, I think like I just don't think that there's like some huge upside here. I just
agree.
Maybe I'm wrong. There are people that would take him with a top 2 or 3 pick. I just personally like what I've seen. Like I can't get there.
I fully agree. Again, if you watch my Stephon Castle video, this will be a lot of the same stuff that you kind of saw in here that Will said, right? Just the advantage creation, the scoring, the shooting. Probably not what you need for an on-ball guy, but I think in Portland, honestly, this would probably like be a more realistic one if we flipped Nisi and Castle. It's like, I can see that happening.
Yeah,
but I think it makes a lot of sense as like an off-ball guy next to you already have your Scoot. Who knows what's going to happen with Simons and Sharp? But I do like the Castle fit for Portland as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. So we're gonna. Oh, sorry. Dude.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say I feel good about him there, but go
Yeah.
ahead.
Cool. We're gonna definitely pick up the pace for these last 15 picks. Starting with me having 15 at Miami, I'm giving them Solo because this is like one. Like I want Miami is really the place where it's like I want this raw player to go there and they're going to be sick. And to me, that is Solo. I think his feel is honestly a little underrated from at least what I've seen. Like he's super raw offensively, but he can do a little bit of stuff. Let me get past these modest clips where he like can attack closeouts and make some pretty like impressive window bounce passes and stuff. And his motor is incredible. His defense, I have honestly like was very surprised by how good I think he is on defense right now. Obviously has his issues in terms of like attentiveness and positioning, but so athletic, so enormous, incredible motor, really like involving himself in multiple actions. And I think Miami, like of any spot where like Solo, I think is a risk that there's risk involved with him for sure. But the upside for him is like a two-way, like wing off ball wrecker wing type with shooting and connective passing. Like I want that guy learning in Miami. So that's my Solo pick here.
Yeah, no, I think I'm probably a little bit lower on him. I think I just have like pretty serious concerns about the touch and like how he's able to score.
Yeah, the
Like
scoring is a big worry for sure.
yeah, like I don't know if I forget what he shot from three this year, but I don't know if that's the level of shooter he currently is. Just given how poor his touch is from pretty much everywhere else on the court. Um, but like Miami is kind of a place where it's worked out for a lot of
Exactly.
people.
That's really the basis of my process here is like raw guy with lots of issues. Get them to Miami. They're going to be good. Cool.
Yeah, and then
16.
he's got a motor
Philly.
too, so
Yeah,
it'll work
motor
out
is crazy.
there.
Philly 16. Who we thinking here?
16. Oh man, I think I'm gonna go with Connect here.
Yeah, I think that's who I would have gone with as well.
Yeah, I think this is a good spot for Connect. Older prospect. Definitely like have my concerns with him. He's older. But like the scoring versatility there is amazing. Like tough shot making, really good touch ability to just come off different screens, get to his floater. I think his ability to get downhill is very underrated. Not a bad vertical athlete. I guess like the question is like how amazing is he going to be on the offensive end, given that there are some like pretty real defensive concerns there. But I think at this point in the draft, like talented offensive player that's ready to play minutes right now.
Right. Makes sense for a Sixers team that needs to win right now. I'm definitely lower on Connect, probably than you, and just consensus because I do worry a lot about the age and being as bad of a defender as he is. But the offensive talent is undeniable, and I think Philly makes a lot of sense there. 17 Lakers. This is another really interesting one. I think this is where I'm going to slot Khalil Ware. I like this fit for a couple reasons. One, I think it's a good value. This is around. I probably wear a little higher than this. The concerns with him are obvious, right? There's motor issues, consistency in terms of shooting, and I think his stiffness as a mover sometimes is problematic. But his upside as a rim protector, as an interior scorer, his touch is phenomenal. He's a creative scorer from the mid range in, and I think the shooting upside is pretty real. And for LA, I think this makes sense as both a short and long-term hedge. We all know how AD feels about playing the five. Not his favorite thing to do, regardless of how all-time he is there. I think Ware, assuming you believe in his jumper, and I think the Lakers' track record of development is good enough to where I feel okay about putting Ware in a spot there where he can learn and take time. And, he has LeBron and AD. But I think obviously the upside is pretty significant as well. There's certainly an argument here to go for a more like pro ready guy like the Silva or even like a Jared McCain. But I think Ware, while still maintaining a really high ceiling, as that's an important piece of my philosophy, as well as making sense fit wise in the short and long term, was my thought there.
Yeah, I like the pick. I have Ware in this range ish on my board.
Mhm.
Like similar to like very different player from Edie, but I think like similar in that he uses his length very
Yeah,
well in
I no,
scoring.
I definitely see that similarity in terms of interior scoring dominance, like with touch and length.
Yeah,
And Edie
yeah,
obviously bigger, Ware more mobile and explosive. It's like different flavors of similar.
definitely. Different flavors for sure. Like there's times where it's like straight up just like isn't strong enough to like get leverage while rolling or like facing up, and he can just reach up and kind of like pop it over guys, and he has a
Yeah,
good
and they'll
enough
just
touch
jump
to.
over you. It's like
So yeah, I like him a lot here. I like the fit in LA. Yeah,
awesome. Let's go to 18 Orlando. I'm gonna imagine you probably take a shooter here. Which one? There's quite a few available, or maybe you won't.
yeah. I'm gonna go Jared McCain here. I think
Yeah,
this
that's.
is.
I think that's exactly who I would have taken here. Yeah.
I like McCain, and I think a guy that really was just like phenomenal as a shooter this season in every regard.
Absurd,
Um,
absurd.
yeah, he was 30 for 53 on transition threes this season, which I think is a testament to how he always has his hands up. Like his shot prep is the most impressive thing for me. Like he's always ready to catch, always ready to fire, can shoot off movement going either direction. And yeah,
Yes.
he's like there's physical limitations there.
I think he's pretty strong, at least relative to his size. Like, and I think
He
that shows
is
up on both ends.
he is definitely strong. He's stout, and I think he measured
Yeah.
200 at the combine too,
Yeah,
which
like he's
counts
built
for
and
something.
he's not an athlete and he's not big, but he can hold his own. And I think
Yeah,
again, for Orlando, like so desperately needing shooting, and I think you can make a real argument that McCain is the best shooter in the draft. So I love this. I think it's perfect.
yeah. I'm a big fan of McCain. I think I like on my board I have him even higher than this a few spots. So
Yeah,
feel good about him
great
here.
pick. Cool. 19. This is going to be the Cody Williams spot. Definitely going to go higher than this in real life. I would imagine you're probably a little lower on him as well. I've definitely warmed to Cody throughout the process because I do think there's real ceiling there with just a guy with his movement skills, touch, and feel stuff. I think Toronto is the right situation where this is honestly really similar to Solo for me, where I'm like Toronto has had such a good success in history of developing these like touch mobile raw wings, where I think dropping Cody in there is a good idea. And I do have significant worries about his jumper and his creation. Like the handle is a big work in progress. He really struggles to generate advantages on the ball. Defense is very inconsistent, but I think that's as much a function of youth and strength as anything because his movement is just phenomenal. Um, yeah, I definitely would not be excited to take him in like the top 10. I get it. I understand why, but I think the upside for him is not like so superstar high that I'm willing to kind of totally ignore the flaws, but I think around 19 is like where I really like a sweet spot for him that I like.
Yeah, I think I like him in this range. I think he's another guy that maybe is a few notches higher on my personal board too. I just think the movement skills are really incredible, and I'm curious to
Yeah.
see how he develops defensively because he is so young. Um, Although I think he's probably a little bit old. Is he on the older end of freshman? I don't know off the
I
top of
think
my
he
head.
is on
Either
the
way,
older. I think he is on the older skin. We'll
I,
check our handy dandy rookie
yeah.
skill kits.
Either way,
Uh,
like he's a freshman. Like he is a young.
19.6, so pretty normal freshman age.
Yeah. Um, Regardless, like incredible mover. I think there's like some real flashes defensively. And I think
Yeah.
like if he buys in, like that's an area of the floor where he can excel.
Yeah. Are you
Um,
higher on his defense or offense?
I think like probably defense. I think there is like
All
a
right.
lot to
Yeah.
clean up
Me
defensively.
too. Me
But
too.
I'm more intrigued by what he can bring to the table there.
The movement skills are really crazy. Like
Yeah, yeah. Like I was reading the Bleacher Report mock today, and I think he was compared to Jaden McDaniels, and that's like obviously like very lofty praise, but it did get me thinking because I don't think I ever thought Jaden would reach those heights defensively. They played very
yeah,
different
fair enough.
roles out in.
Yeah, the rim protection is the big difference there, obviously.
Yeah,
But
big difference there, and like Jaden was in that 2-3 zone, and he showed great instincts in that zone, but like it's
it's
it's very
it was a
difficult
Mike Hopkins zone. It's like
Yeah,
whatever.
like he's kind of like hanging out on the back line there anyways. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. Like I do think the movement skills and length are very good. A lot to clean up there, but I think at 19 it's great value, and
Yeah.
Toronto,
Agreed.
known for taking these long, lanky guys with some level of creation upside.
Cool. 20 Cleveland. Who are we going with here, Will?
Let's see. Man, I think I'm gonna go with this might be a good spot for oof man.
This is an interesting one.
This is a tough one. I think I'm gonna go Jalen Tyson here.
Damn,
Um
you sniped me
yeah,
again.
there's a like I think like Cleveland's big issue for me um these last few years has just been like lack of stuff on the wing. Like I like Isaac Okoro a lot, but like it's really about like defense with him. Like he really isn't bringing that
They need
much.
wings that can dribble
Yeah,
badly.
exactly. Wings that can provide like some sort of creation or offensive value. Um, I thought about De Silva a lot here too, but I do think Tyson is um, a little bit more skilled as like a closeout attacker creator.
Yeah. I
Um,
think the athletic difference between those two is big as well.
yeah, I think I trust Tyson as like a guy that can like hold up defending threes more than I do De Silva, which definitely matters. Like Cleveland obviously has a great back line there, but they also do have two small guards on the perimeter that they're starting. Not that I
Yeah.
think Tyson is like a lockdown defender or anything. I think he has his issues on that end for sure, but I think the skill level and size and touch and footwork is all like very impressive with him. Curious to see how he scales down. Really high
Yeah.
usage guy at Cal this year, but I do think like you know everyone on the floor like should be asked to create to some degree. Capitalizing off the advantage that
Yeah,
another
or
person
everyone
creates.
should be able to if needed.
Yeah. So like, his ability to like put the ball on the floor and make stuff that happen like that can uh like he can thrive there in other ways without carrying 30
For
usage.
sure. For sure. Love that pick. Love them getting another wing who can really do stuff. Pelicans at 21. All of my favorite Pelicans prospects are off the board. So I'm going to go with a guy who I love, my guy, Dylan Jones, who's not going to go this high in real life, but man, it would be so good in New Orleans, who really, aside from rim protection, which I would have loved to get them a legit rim protector here, but that's just not on the board right now. But Dylan fits their other need, which is just like another guy who can really do stuff with the ball and have offensive juice. That was such a consistent problem with them this year that outside of Zion, really, they didn't have other guys who could really create or handle or work in the half court. CJ and Ingram are both at their best, probably as like complementary off ball scorers. And I think aside from those two, right, those guys with Ingram injury issues just had nobody. All of their depth pieces are rangy defensive wings. That's
Yeah.
pretty much all they have. And though Jones has some concerns with his defensive translation and the shooting and how good that's going to be, he is a dynamic creator with his handle and his playmaking and his strength and his craft. And I think whether or not the entirety of his game translates is a question. I have no questions about his scoring and his creation game translating. And I think because one that's so valuable, advantage creation, feel, I think he's a weird upside swing as well. One of the most absurd statistical profiles you've ever seen. 31 usage, 30 defensive rebounding, 31 assists. Nobody in the history of college basketball has ever come even close to those numbers, at least in modern recent history where we have the data to look at that. But yeah, Jones here, I think, is a pick that I love and isn't going to happen, but I really wish it would.
Yeah, really unique player. I was gonna mention the stat profile too.
It's so weird, but it's
Definitely like a
awesome.
guy that's like popped up in like Bart's queries and stuff for, the last however many years of his college career, just because he's so unique. Definitely have concerns about his athleticism, but really unique player, and I think he has great touch. Like, I think there is like a realistic chance that the
Yeah.
shot comes around.
I think the shot, like, again, considering how high usage he is and how few easy catch and shoots he gets,
Yeah,
and the fact that he is like on tape a really smart off ball spacer, has great movement efficiency. Like, he has no problems playing off the ball, even though he's just forced to be a high volume offensive player because of his situation. He can do it off the ball, and I think I'm willing to bet on him becoming a shooter. Unfortunate that Fred Vincent is no longer in the building, but hopefully they can, not all of that brain drain happened.
yeah, for sure. I like probably a little bit lower here, but I think that really cool, unique player. And I'm a fan.
Awesome. 22 Phoenix. This is another important one, I think. Who are we going with here?
Ooh, yeah, another one that's tough. I think highest guy left on my board right now is Filipowski, and I think that's who I'm going to go with here.
I think that's a wise choice.
Yeah, I think with Filipowski, just like a really, really skilled offensive player, legit 7-footer that can do it all, really versatile passer, can face up, run inverted pick and rolls, things like that. He's not a great athlete, not super long, which I think really does limit what he can bring to the table as like an around.
And that's why he's going in this range, given his impressive skill, right? Like,
yeah, and he's a legit 7-footer, but his wingspan is shorter than that too. So I like his flexibility. I like his touch inside the arc. We'll see if that can like develop into like consistent shooting, because there's games where you watch him, it's like, yeah, of course this guy can shoot, and then you look at the percentages and you're like, oh, I don't know if he can.
And again, he hit like 35% this year on solid volume and, on tape, impressive versatility for a guy of that size. So I tend to lean optimistic on the shot, though I do understand the concerns.
Yeah, and I think like Filipowski, like we talked earlier about, like with Edie, the like third, sixth man big type. Like, I think he can like be in that role as well. Like Kelly Olynyk kind of like rolled. Like I think there's
Phoenix is just like so needy for bigs like that. I think this is a super
absolutely.
good one.
No, I
awesome. Love that pick.
Stop his slide there.
Yeah, I totally agree. 23. I think you're gonna like this pick. A little out of the box, but we're gonna give the Bucks Mogbo.
Oh man, I was even thinking about him for Phoenix too.
Yeah, I mean, the Bucks so desperately need an injection of youth and athleticism in their front court. All of their guys, aside from Giannis, are old and slow, and aside from Andre Jackson, but he's only one piece. And Mogbo, despite being a 6'6" center who doesn't shoot, is a comical athlete. I think very notably is like the only person who even comes close to Edie in terms of like dunks, which is crazy considering his height, right? But again, 6'9", he is 6'6". He's like 6'6" and sucks. I have stood next to him in person. I am tall, but not like that tall, and he wasn't that much taller than me. But again, amazing playmaker, feel guy is awesome. His events creation, incredibly good, like wing defense potential. I think there's just so much fun stuff you can do with him, especially in a Dame and Giannis offense as a big, but also maybe a perimeter player, a transition guy, a dunker spot guy, where I think there's a good chance Mogbo goes in this range. I don't know exactly where, but I think it's more likely than people may think. But I think the Bucks would be a particularly good fit for him, just roster and trajectory wise.
Yeah, I love Mogbo, and I have been considering him with like each of my last 3 picks. Very
I thought about him for New Orleans as well.
Yeah, I think the fit there, like him and Zion together, would be very interesting.
Yeah, I just would have feared giving them another tiny center, but like,
yeah, no, it's very fair, and he's a unique player because he really doesn't shoot at all. Like it's just not his
yeah,
game.
it's
And
not like he's a bad shooter, right? Like he just doesn't do it. Like again,
yeah, so
two
I
threes
feel
all
like
year, not a good mid range shooter, like efficiency wise at least.
I guess like for me, like there is a chance that maybe he like can develop into an okay spot up guy just because he does so much other stuff well that like he'll be on the floor. Like teams are going to want to invest resources into helping him potentially learn to hit spot ups. Like this is
Right.
a guy that's
It's
like,
such a high value swing skill in this draft.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's fantastic passer, fantastic athlete, defensive playmaker, um, unreal finisher. Like I tweeted the other day, like dunks per 40, he had more than like Zion, AD, Bagley, like
Absolutely.
name whoever, and he's getting them like on drives.
Yeah. I don't know if it was you or I don't know if this was you or like Matt who tweeted like his versatility in dunking is so crazy, like getting them on lobs, on rebounds, on post ups,
Yeah,
on drives. Edie's dunks are just like at the front of the rim dunking the ball. That's how most high dunk guys are, right? But Mogbo is such a
right.
unique athlete that I think there is a lot of upside there where it's not usually as simple as like athlete equals upside, but his athleticism plus the skill and the feel stuff he's shown has me really intrigued. And I think obviously people like us and draft Twitter people love Mogbo, but I think people in the league are going to like him more than people think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like similar to Edie again, to keep coming back to him, like unique stat profile in a way that like we just haven't really seen before. Like there's been high flyers, but like are they like throwing perfect dimes to cutters and like looking off defenders on the back line and stuff like that? We just like haven't really seen a dude like this. And like maybe he can't shoot right now, but I
Let's
feel
see.
like there's a way to
80 dunks, 20 assists rate. Anybody there? Not this year. Anybody at all? Any guesses?
I don't think so.
Zion, maybe? Did Zion dunk 80 times? I don't even think he did. Yep, just Mogbo. Very unique. One.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's go to the Knicks picks. Since again, I'm running a little short on time, but we can speed through these for sure. Your first Knicks,
through these.
Your Knicks pick. I'm very intrigued by these two picks. So what are you thinking here?
Yeah, I'm gonna go Ryan Dunn here, I think.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, interesting player because like don't know exactly what he's gonna bring to the table on offense, but phenomenal defender. Really great help side rim protector. Guy that can slide on ball. Great strength, great length. I think he had like 3 steal rate, 10 block rate. That's ridiculous. And I think at this point in the draft, like he has like legitimate NBA level skills on the defensive end. At this point, I think you just have to
He's
hope
a
that the
comical defender. Like it is absurd. And I do agree that like I am really, really worried about his offense, but he is crazy. He's a crazy defender. For the next Knicks pick, gonna totally opposite side of the coin here. And this kind of response to your pick, but also kind of not. And I'm gonna go Tyler Smith, who completely opposite, also a 4, really, really poor defender, awesome offensive upside. He's an incredible shot maker, both on and off the ball. I think his skill is interesting to me, like the flashes of handling and closeout attacking and stuff. And the Knicks specifically, I like for both of these guys because they're so good at developing players and they have so much depth that neither of these players would be pressured to contribute immediately. And I think both Dunn and Smith are players that need time on the bench in the G League. So I love both of these, honestly, for the Knicks. I think this would be a super cool outcome for them, just from like a varying skill sets point of view.
Yeah, no, I like the pick there. I think Smith getting him at this point in the draft is very good value. Super talented shot maker. Yeah, really, really great pick. And I think doubling up on these guys, like this is an outcome for the Knicks.
This is awesome. I love this one. This is one of my favorite little niches of this draft. Anyways, Washington, you got Holland for them at 2. Who are you pairing with Holland and the rest of the core?
Yeah. Definitely an interesting spot here. Um, I think I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go with Daddy. I think.
Damn,
I think at this spot
I
in
wanted him
like
in.
the
I wanted him
draft,
in Utah.
he's a guy I
Yeah,
like a lot in like
absolutely.
the early 20s, maybe even
Yeah,
higher
he's
than that.
like late teens for me on my board. Like I think he's
Yeah,
very talented.
he's a guy that like played on a good team and was like very efficient against good competition. 73% at the rim, 46% dribble jumpers, like 39% catch and shoot threes. I don't love his defense. I think he gets lost a lot, but he's also very
Yeah,
young, and I like his movement skills. So there's chance for
exactly. Yeah,
development there.
it's kind of like Cody to me, maybe a little less extreme. Where like he has all of the normal young player issues, but like the frame and the athleticism and the movement are awesome.
Yeah, and he's just like a much more like confident, capable shooter than Cody.
Awesome,
Um,
awesome shooter.
yeah, so I think here it's just great value for Washington.
Love that. Love Washington getting another real ceiling bet here, which is what they need. Cool. Minnesota 27. This pick is ridiculously easy. I am stopping the Bub Carrington slide here. I think Minnesota is an incredible fit for him as they so desperately need someone else who can get up volume threes and create with the ball in their hands, not named Anthony Edwards. And I think Carrington has the highest ceiling out of anyone. I think there's a case for taking a more pro ready guy like Simpson or AJ Mitchell, who I also considered here. But I think Carrington's upside obviously is the highest. He's not going to turn 18 until after the draft, and is a ridiculous shot maker. Will get up threes on and off the ball, can really handle, is an incredibly good playmaker. And I think the Wolves, especially being the monstrous defensive team they are, can maybe make up some of his early career defensive limitations as he bulks up. Because that's the biggest thing with him, right? His physical limitations are extreme on both ends, like getting to the rim, defending. But I think Minnesota fit wise, and I think this is a great value for him as well. It makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I'm probably lower on Bub Carrington than most. Like I kind of have him around this range, late first, early second on my board. I just kind of worry that
Yeah,
he doesn't
I think
like
that's
meet
fair.
the athleticism threshold to play in the NBA. Like I don't know. I do wish that like he could have gone back another year and we could have maybe seen
Yeah, I get
like
that.
more evidence of like some ability to finish at the rim and get there. But at this spot in the draft, like this is around where I have him anyways, so I can't
Yeah.
complain.
I think I'm probably like in the middle of people. Like some people are super high on him, like late lotto, and some people are low. I think I have him in like the mid 20s range. But I think Minnesota is a spot where I like him a lot.
Yeah, I mean his screen craft, his ability to like score off the dribble, like that's all really cool stuff for a young guy. Um,
Fantastic.
yeah,
Denver 28. Who are you going
yeah.
with here for the Nuggets?
I think I'm gonna go with debating a couple wing forward types here. I think I'm gonna go with De Silva though.
Yeah.
I think another guy that I kind of like have in that ish range. Really good shooter to me, even if like the volume isn't totally outrageous, but a guy that
It's
improved his
it's
shooting every
damn
season.
good. Like
Yeah, he got up
man.
like eight per 100. But I think like in the NBA, you expect him to maybe even like scale that up a
Yeah.
little because
Yeah.
Colorado, they're throwing him the ball in the post. He's like facing up, and I think his ability to like hit a lot of those like touch turnaround mid range jumpers, like that does
It
matter.
matters.
And I feel very good about him being a good shooter at the next level.
Same.
Um, Not sure exactly who he defends. And I talked about him for Cleveland too, and I think that's why like Tyson might be a slightly better fit there. But like
Yeah. I think the
De Silva,
Silva's athletic limitations are pretty significant on both ends
yeah,
of the floor.
absolutely. But I think De Silva is a guy that can like really shoot like
Yeah.
attack closeouts
And
to
like,
some
God,
degree
can
with
you
like an
imagine him playing off Jokic? Like, that's ridiculous.
yeah. I think you can really see him like shine as a cutter there. But yeah, I think 28's really good value for De Silva.
Cool. 29 Utah. In a similar vein to just taking unique, interesting guys, I'm going to go with Duricic here, who I like a lot in this late first range as a super talented driver, really creative passer. Unsure about the level of shooter and defender he is, and I wish the athleticism showed up more consistently. But his talent, I think, is pretty undeniable. It's like a 6'8" guy who can really dribble and create on a drive and make creative passes. And again, Utah has so many young players, so many picks. Duricic potentially being a guy who would be willing to stash would be really useful for them.
Yeah, definitely a very skilled offensive player that put up huge numbers, similar to Topic too, from Mega. So, I think 29 is a good spot for him there.
Yeah. Good late first upside swing.
Yeah, no.
Last pick in the draft, the defending champion recently, Boston Celtics. Who are we adding to that roster?
Yeah, my hometown team, the Celtics. So very pleased right now. No, I feel very happy. But
I'm glad we all agree that the Eastern Conference Finals was the real finals and the Pacers the real runner-ups. But
yeah, I mean that could have easily been 3-1. You know, I don't know how we managed to sweep, but we I think Celtics here, interesting spot as the defending champions with everyone under contract coming back as well.
Tons of ways you can go here, I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna, they drafted a great wing defender last season, in Jordan Walsh, and I think I'm actually gonna go similar direction, drafting a great wing defender. And I don't even know if he's on the sheet.
I know exactly who you're gonna take. He's not.
It's gonna be Isaiah Crawford here.
Yeah, let's go.
I think incredible defender, great defensive playmaker. There's obviously concerns there as a guy that has had serious injuries, is very old, and was playing.
I don't think he's the crazy old for a senior, is he?
I think he's a fifth year, right?
Yeah, I mean he turns 23 in November, which is pretty normal for seniors. Compare that to a guy like Connect, who is going to be 24 as a rookie. Yeah. Like Shannon or Kolek, not crazy, not ancient,
Yeah, no, I think that's very, very fair. But I think just a really great defender that has shot well the last few years too. Can get to his spots off the dribble too. I think the concerns are the injuries.
40% on 200 attempts over the last 3 years. The individual season over season volume isn't great, but when you combine them, the consistency is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, honestly. Yeah. I think he clearly has good shooting touch and can get to his spots and hit some shots off the dribble. So I think
fully with you on Crawford.
Yeah, I think getting a guy that has a legit shot at being a rotation player and an impactful one at the 30th pick, good value here for the Celtics.
I very quickly, before we head out, want to hit on someone who I know we're going to comment on. What about Jacoby Walter? Why didn't either of us draft him? As I imagine we think similarly about him, but what's the problem that kept Walter out of our top 30 mock?
Yeah, I guess for me, the big pitch with Walter is the shooting, right? And I think he's a very, very good movement shooter, really good footwork, and a lot of his makes very clean looking, similar to McCain in that I think can go off movement going.
Shot 30%.
It looks great. I just think he's not outstanding as a shooter, right? If the pitch is shooting and there's clear limitations elsewhere, then the shooting has to be damn good. And I don't think Jacoby is quite at that level. Probably lower on his defense as well than most. I think there's some clear athleticism issues there with keeping guys in front of him, and he isn't bringing the Reed Shepherd type playmaking and instincts away from the ball. Yeah. No one is to be fair to him, but I think I think he's a guy that I don't hate him late first. I've got him in that range-ish on my board,
same
late 20s, early 30s, something like that. But I guess the way it shook out today, just didn't end up in getting in
Yeah,
there.
and a lot of these, like, I considered him for a lot of these late picks, but ultimately liked other options better.
Yeah, and like Furphy is a guy who I think first, like I have him in my first round too. Really interesting player to me. KJ Simpson, AJ
Yeah,
Mitchell, all
love
guys that
both.
I considered taking at points.
Yeah, I considered. Yeah, I definitely considered those guys as well. Harrison Ingram maybe in that range as well. Chomsky's interesting to me. I just dropped a video on him. Newton interesting to me, but I think we got most of the important ones that I wanted to
Yeah,
talk about.
I'm still a Beekman guy too. Like I did consider
Same.
Beekman
Yeah,
a little bit for
I believe
Boston.
in him.
Yeah,
Awesome. Well, this was fantastic, Will. Thank you so much for your generous time. Tell the people where they can find you, any work you have planned, what you're just, floor is yours.
yeah. No, I appreciate you having me on, Ben. This was a lot of fun. Yeah, cool thought exercise here. But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. My handle is W_A_Morris. Writing stuff at Swish Theory, hoping to get some more content out before the draft. But if not, I'm always posting clips and stats and
Yeah.
random observations on my Twitter. So you can find me there.
Give Will a follow. One of my favorite draft follows, no doubt. I will have his stuff linked below. But anyways, thank you all for watching. I might end up splitting this into 2 parts, but so if this is part 2, then thank you for watching part 2. If not, thank you for watching the whole thing, and enjoy the rest of your night.